Your body is a wondrous creation that was designed from the very beginning to create as much fat as it could out of whatever sources of food that it could eat, and also to hold on to fat as long as possible. Why is that? Well, think about it. Except for the last couple of hundred years, throughout the history of humankind, people did not know where their next meal was coming on a regular basis. In fact, in every culture around the world, people would eat as much as they could whenever they could, but they would go through long periods of time of starvation, sometimes for several days, and sometimes for weeks, and most often for months, because everywhere in the world there are seasons when plants grow, when animals are available to eat, and there are seasons when they are not. And as a result of which, our bodies are designed to hold on to whatever nutrition we possibly can and keep a hold of it as long as possible. And so our bodies are designed that when we eat certain ways, it's going to create fat. And if we eat other ways, we're going to burn fat. And so we need to understand that our bodies are really very good at this. In fact, we're all descendant of women who were very good at gaining weight during the time that they were pregnant, and very good at holding on to that weight after they deliver their babies so that they could feed their babies through those times of starvation. In fact, most people for long periods of time, women would deliberately get pregnant in the fall so that in the spring they could have their babies and feed them through the times when food was abundant so that they could nurse them through the winter period the following year. So that's how our bodies are designed. And so our bodies are redesigned to eat and to be very good at eating. What we don't realize is that what we eat makes us hungry, and it's that way by design. What does that mean? Well, it means that certain foods are going to make you gain weight. Now, what are those foods? Now, we all know about high fructose corn syrup. We know that's a bad actor. And folks, it's in everything. It's in applesauce. It's in, if you go to McDonald's, it's in chocolate milk. It is in ketchup. It is in so many things you won't believe. And anything that high fructose corn syrup is not in, probably corn is in. And so we know all that. All of us know that that's a real problem out there. So what kind of foods make us gain weight? Well, let's make a real simple and very short list. The first kinds are just processed foods. The more processed a food is, with very few exceptions, the more likely it is that when you eat it, it's going to make you gain weight. Why? Because processing it concentrates the calories, and in that process, it affects mechanisms in your body that says, you know what, I'm going to store this. Because again, think about it. Going back 200, 300, 400 years, people didn't have lots and lots of ovens around. People didn't eat a lot of processed food. People ate the food that came out of the field. They ate the food that came out of the forests and out of the plains. And that's what they ate. And they ate it in season because, well, that was the only way to eat it. And so this thing we call processed food is a fairly new thing. And from the point of view of our genome, as a result of which when we do eat it, it causes our body to say, hey, this is a lot of extra calories that I need right now. I'm going to store some of that I've just eaten as fat. One way to tell if a food is going to make you gain weight is how long is the shelf life. If you've got a food that you can put on a shelf, a processed food, and it can sit there unrefrigerated and you can still eat it a month later, chances are that it's going to cause you to gain weight if you eat it because of how they process it, and all the preservatives they put in there are going to trigger weight gaining mechanisms in your body. There's also things called starchy carbohydrates. What are starchy carbohydrates? Starchy carbohydrates are things like potatoes, rice, corn, all of those kinds of things, all the different kinds of wheat out there. These are starchy carbohydrates. Our bodies are very good at processing starchy carbohydrates and storing it as fat. Every culture on the face of the earth grew up around a particular starchy carbohydrate. you already know about that in uh, China. We know there's rice there, but what we don't realize is that every other culture also grew up around it. So you talk about the ancient South American, Central American, they grew up around quinoa and other starchy carbohydrates like that. There are a lot of vitamins and minerals and other wonderful things in these plants. I'm not saying that they're bad. I'm saying that in today's day and age, they are so processed that when we eat them, that a lot of the good stuff has been taken out. And as a result of which, what we're left with is the sugar. So if you look at the kind of wheat that we ate as a people 300 years ago, it's not the same wheat we eat today. What we eat today is very, very, very starchy compared to what our great-great-great-grandparents ate. And so it's going to cause us to gain weight. Starchy carbohydrates will make you gain weight if you eat them in excess. And here's what a lot of people don't realize. If you eat them hot, as opposed to cold. Hot potatoes as opposed to cold potatoes. Hot mashed potatoes as opposed to cold mashed potatoes. Hot corn as opposed to cold corn. What you need to know is that the hotter a starchy carbohydrate is, the more it's going to make you hungry later. And that's the key. So, but there's also other kind of foods you need to know about. Did you know that milk and milk products make your body not know that you're eating them? Think about a baby. A baby is designed from the very beginning to drink milk and drink as much as it can until it can't drink anymore. How many of you seen a baby or had a baby that would just keep drinking and just until it couldn't drink anymore? And then when pretty soon it wanted to eat again. And it's because we don't have any sense of satiation when we eat dairy products. And the same is true of fat products, products that have a lot of fat in them. Our body doesn't register that we're eating fat. Why? Because our bodies want fat to store fat. And so we crave fat. Particularly if you're a woman, you're going to crave fat. And when you put fat and dairy together, what do you have? You have ice cream. And who can turn down ice cream? So these are food that when you eat them, they're designed in your body to make you gain weight. And they do that by making you hungrier later. In fact, the more of these foods that you eat is going to make you eat more of them later, because as it works out in your body, that when you eat these foods, some of them don't register as you having eaten anything at all, so you still feel hungry. That's why you can eat an awful lot of ice cream and not notice that you're eating a lot of ice cream. And it's the body's mechanism for saying, you know, you're eating these things and I want you to eat more. And so the food you eat in this meal is going to affect how much you eat in the next meal. And we don't realize that. So the food that you eat now is going to make you hungrier in your next meal. And the more you eat in this meal, the more you're going to want to eat in the next meal. It sets up your hunger mechanism for you. What we don't realize is the foods we eat are making us hungry. So why don't we just starve ourselves? Why don't we just not eat? Let's skip breakfast, right? Let's save that 400 calories. Well, as it turns out, when you skip a meal, it tells your body to slow the metabolism down. So your metabolism slows down about 300 calories. And then when you finally do eat, what's going to happen is you're going to overeat 300 calories in the next meal, maybe 500 calories, but the first 300 calories of your next meal, whatever it is, are going to get stored as fat. So the more you skip a meal, the more likely you are to gain weight in your next meal because you're going to overeat in your next meal. Do not skip meals. As skipping meals is the fastest way I know to gain weight. So it's important for you to understand that the food that you eat is going to make you hungry if it's processed, if it's a lot of dairy, if it's a lot of fat, if it's processed foods, and if you're skipping meals, it's going to make you hungrier. All of these things make you hungrier in the next meal, and that is how you end up gaining weight. And so you end up going, I'm going to look for something to eat. It's not even lunch yet, and I'm starving. It's because you ate a big breakfast. But if you don't eat breakfast, you're going to get hungry in that next meal, and when you finally do eat, you're going to store a lot of that as fat. So that's how what you eat makes you hungry.